Welcome to Cycling Ireland's Introduction to Basic Bike Maintenance. Today we're going to show you how to change a tube, check your tyre and pump your tyre to the correct pressure. But before you start, make sure you have all your equipment ready. We need a pump. This is a little mini pump. We have a track pump here just in case. We have a set of tyre levers. In this set there's 3, and we have our spare tube for the job that we're going to be doing. Ray's going to run through how to remove the tyre and tube and go through refitting a new tube for you.
So Tina just mentioned tyre levers. They are so important for this job. One thing you never use, screwdriver. So what you will do using a screwdriver is you'll damage the wheel trying to remove the tyre from the wheel. These are made from a toughened plastic. There's lots of different brands on the market, but these are recommended for the job. So we have our flat, punctured tyre tube. So what we will do is we will get our first tyre lever, and the opposite side of the valve, beside a spoke, we'll use the tyre lever, and this particular tyre lever has a hooked end on one end and has, a little lip on the other end. The one with the lip on it is the one you'll use to lift the tyre off the rim. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert that under the tyre, and I'm going to use the tyre lever to lift the tyre off the rim. The hooked end will hook around the spoke, and now that tyre lever is in place. I'll get my second tyre lever and I'll go roughly about a spoke width apart, or an inch from the first tyre lever, and I'll do the exact same thing. Now, move the tyre back to get the tyre lever under the tyre, and if possible, hook it onto a spoke. Now my third tyre lever, I'll be able to use this again in the exact same manner. And I'm working the tyre back to get the tyre lever in under the tyre to lift it off. Once I have this done, I should be able then to start to work the tyre off the rim using the tyre lever. Don't use your hand to do this, because what will happen if you have a piece of glass, a thorn stuck in the tyre, you're going to cut your finger. So use the tyre lever to run the tyre, to remove the tyre all the way from the rim. On this particular wheel, we have what's called a Schrader valve. That's common on most mountain bikes. There is other valves on the market. This is your Schrader, the same as here. There's also Presta valves. A Presta valve is a small, skinny valve. These are available for all types of wheels, so make sure you know the valve type you have on the wheel that you're repairing. So before I remove the tube, I remove the dust cap. If I don't remove that, the valve won't come out of the rim. And then starting on the opposite side from where the valve is, I'll put my hand in and I'll take the tube out. Coming all the way back to where the valve is, then I'll just gently lift the tyre back, and then I can remove the tube. So I have the punctured tube removed. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to check the tyre very, very carefully by rubbing my fingers, using my hand around the tyre from side to side, and I'm going to check that all the way, the whole way around the tyre, to see if there's anything in there, a thorn, a piece of glass. I want to remove that, so when I refit my new tube, I'm not going to puncture it again. Today we're not going to mend the puncture, we're going to replace the tube, but you can mend the tube. That's in a different course. One of the things you need to do after you remove any item in the tyre is check the rim tape on the tyre. Tina is going to explain this.
Rim tape covers the spokes on the inside of your wheel, so it goes along around the edge It can be made from PVC or a cloth material. If that is damaged or if it's worn or if it's moved to the side, you'd be better to change that now. You have the tire and tube off anyway, you might as well get to that. Rim tape is available in all your local bike shops.
So I have my new tube, I'm going to replace my new tube. I've removed it from the box. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure I give the tube a bit of shape. Now I'm using the track pump. On this particular pump here, it's got two different heads on it, one for Schrader, but our valve here today. There's also one for Presta that we mentioned earlier on. So I'm using the Schrader valve into the Schrader connection on the pump. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give it a bit of shape. By doing that, it really helps me to put the tube, feed the tube correctly back into the tire. So I'll just find where the valve opening is. And like when I was removing the tube earlier on, I'll push the tire back and I'll push the valve down into the tube. We mentioned we can get punctures from thorns, pieces of glass, a bad rim tape. You could also get a pinch flat. That is where there's nothing in the tire, but you've come in contact with a sharp edge like a pothole or a curb and you've punctured your tube. That can happen if you don't keep the pressure topped up in your tire. So every week I would recommend topping the pressure up. Keep the pressure topped up in your tires and your tubes because they will lose pressure every week. So what I've just done there, after feeding the tube back into the tire, I'm now coming back to where the valve is. I'm pushing the tire, starting at the valve. This is my reference, and I'm working away from the valve. The reason I do this, that helps me to keep the valve straight. This is good practice. Now I've rotated the wheel, the valve is on the opposite side, and I'm working the tube, the tire evenly back onto the wheel. Now we get to this point here, and this is very, very difficult. Experienced bike mechanics struggle with this section. This can be very difficult, a lot of effort needed to get that section of tire back onto the wheel, and this is normal. My advice is never use, these are used to remove, never use these, in my opinion, to put the tire back onto the wheel, because what will happen is you can pinch flat, you can get a pinch flat with the tire lever, so your new tube is now punctured before you even inflate it. So always do this part by hand. So what I'm going to do is, and a little trick, very difficult, so from this section here, all the way around to where the tire is not seated back on the rim, I'm going to work the tire. And what happens here is I'm going to push the valve just up into the valve back into the tire. This helps the tire to seat correctly onto the rim by doing this. You're just helping it. And you get back to this section here, and that effort, there's still a bit of effort, but it's a lot less. And you can see that went on a lot easier. So now we've refitted our new tube and we're ready to reinflate the tire. The one thing you need to know is what pressure goes into the tire. The information is always written on the side of the tire. Tina is going to help explain this.
On this particular tire, it goes from 50 to 75 PSI. It's a hybrid tire. On the bike that Ray's working on, it's a smaller wheel, it's 40 PSI. And maybe some people have racing bikes, they will go to approximately 100 PSI, but it might say 90 to 110 on the side of their tire. They'll go to somewhere in the midpoint, about 100. Always check that. You don't want it underinflate, you'll cause punctures. You don't want to overinflate because you'll blow the tire up. So you want to make sure you do it correctly. Ray's going to pump this one now for a finish to 40 PSI.
And again, just to recap, that information is always written on the tire. If you look for it, it's there. Sometimes it's really easy to see it, sometimes it's more difficult, but if you look, it's written, it will be written there. So just to pump my tire back up, it's a Schrader valve, I'm using the Schrader end of the pump, proper connection. and I re-inflate back up to the proper pressure. I know because I've checked on my tyre that this is 40 psi, so we bring it back up to the correct pressure of 40 psi. And now I've finished, I'm going to refit the dust cap, and the last thing I'll do is I'll just check the tyre to make sure it's seated correctly, that the tyre isn't lifting off the rim in any place. If that is happening, it'll be very obvious. And what I'll do is I'll leave the pressure back out and start again to re-inflate the tyre.
So just to recap for everybody, you've got a flat tyre. The tools you're going to need, you've got to get yourself a pump, either your mini pump or your track pump, your tyre levers and your replacement tube. Hopefully you don't need a new tyre, but you'll figure that out as you go through your tyre to see what's caused the puncture. Thank you.